BJ Mafia, what's poppin'? So Jaguar fans, we are less than 2 weeks away from this year's NFL draft, and this year feels a lot different. The Jaguars find themselves in a position that they've not found themselves in since the 2018 NFL draft, where the Jaguars are not gonna be picking inside the top 10. The Jaguars the last 2 seasons obviously had their choice at the top of the draft with the number 1 overall pick in Trevor Lawrence and Trayvon Walker. Now the Jags are gonna be selecting number 24 in this year's draft, and a lot of Jaguar fans out there are really curious as to see where we can go. There's a lot of different positions that we could fill at number 24 when you're talking about edge rushers, you're talking about interior defensive line, the secondary, boosting up the offensive interior line. There's a lot of different routes that the Jaguars can go. But as you guys can see from the title of this video, I'm gonna be reacting to your guys' hot takes for the Jaguars to select at number 24 on Twitter. And I wanna really get right into these, but before we actually get into today's video, man, if you guys could, make sure that you guys go ahead and drop me a thumbs up. It takes 1 second and it helps me in the channel out tremendously. And make sure that you guys also go follow me on my socials, especially on Twitter. I'm very active and I'm on there every single day. The link tree will be in the description down below. And make sure that you guys also go hit that subscribe bell to stay tuned for more Jaguars content that I do here on YouTube. But let's actually get into these hot takes. Now getting into this first tweet, it says, Dalton Kincaid would be one of my several home run selections at number 24. Other realistic ones include Deonte Banks and Brian Branch. Now addressing Dalton Kincaid first and foremost, I've talked on Twitter, if you remember my tweet a while back, saying my evaluation of him is I do not like this guy, especially as a first round talent. Now look, I'm evaluating his game as a whole. He's not gonna be drafted into the NFL to be a run blocking or a pass blocking tight end. That's not his game. He's a pass catching threat. He's got a very good route tree. He's got very good hands, and he displayed that a lot at Utah. That is what he's good at, and that's exactly why he's ranked the number 1 or number 2 tight end in this year's class. But me personally, when I did my evaluation of Dalton Kincaid and I looked at his tape and I really went back and reviewed him as a whole, I don't love him as a prospect, so I'm just gonna leave that there, even though he's probably gonna be a solid to a good pass catching tight end in the NFL in the right scheme. Personally, me, I'm not taking him number 24 overall if I'm the Jags. Maybe if he falls a little bit later on in the draft, you consider it, but as of right now, I'm not taking him. When it comes to Deonte Banks and Brian Branch, I've had very high praise for both of these guys. As you guys know on Twitter, I'm extremely high on Deonte Banks, but I've also done full evaluations on both of these guys. I've made 2 videos specifically talking about why the Jaguars should draft these guys at number 24 overall if they're available. Did some film breakdown, talked about some things that I loved and some things I didn't love with both of these players. If you guys want to watch those videos for Deonte Banks and Brian Branch, like I've already talked about, I will make sure that I link to those videos up above for you guys to go ahead and check out. Now getting into this next tweet, it says, if the Jaguars trade for Budda Baker for a 3rd and 6th round pick and get the contract stuff worked out, they need to take the best offensive player available 1st round, preferably Kincaid, Torrance, or one of the right tackles. To me, this is a very good take. Now, I don't know the realistic likelihood of the Jaguars actually trading for Budda Baker, but regardless, even if the Jaguars don't end up trading for him because he's going to be seeking a trade with the Arizona Cardinals, and there's already been internal talks going on with that, I'm all for the Jaguars taking the best offensive player available. Whatever the Jaguars want to do to make this an elite, potent offense and one of the best offenses in football, even though on paper it already looks like it is. If the Jaguars want to go ahead and bolster the offensive line with Torrance, if they want to go ahead and take one of the best tight ends in the class, whatever the Jaguars see for themselves as going to help Trevor Lawrence and make this offense even more elite, I'm all for it, and I'm totally valid with this take. Like I said, I just don't know the likelihood of the Jaguars actually trading for Budda Baker. Now getting into this next tweet says, I don't have a hot take. I just need Brian Branch. Like I said, Brian Branch to me, one of the best secondary prospects in this class. His athleticism may not seem like it's off the charts, but the game tape speaks for itself. Brian Branch is a phenomenal athlete, obviously coming from the Crimson Tide. They're coming from a great program, and the Jaguars have done a lot of work with him, and you've seen the Jaguars really eyeing Brian Branch a lot on social media. I would love to see him here in Duval County. Jaguar fans, I know, are excited to have Brian Branch possibly on this team. Let's not get our hopes up, but I'm extremely high on this kid, and I do think that he would be a great fit, especially in the nickel, being a great box safety alongside Andre Sisco and Rayshon Jenkins. Great hard-hitting safety. Guy reminds me a lot of Bob Sanders back in the day in Indianapolis. Really like Brian Branch a lot, and like I said, if you guys want to see more about Brian Branch, I will link to that video up above. Now this next one's a pretty hot take. Let's actually get into this one. It says, Quentin Johnson, already brought him in, but it could be any of JSN, Flowers, or Addison. They have outs on Kirk and Zay after the season. I know the cap hits, but it could save some money. They'll need to pay Ridley when he blows up again, or replace if not. Also, giant contracts looming. This is actually not as bad of a take as a lot of people might think that it might be, and I'm not completely out on these takes, right? If the Jaguars were to select a Quentin Johnson, a Zay Flowers, or a Jordan Addison, possibly at number 24 overall, I don't think it's ideal because I don't think a receiver is what the Jaguars need right now to go ahead and build a Super Bowl contending roster to go ahead and compete for the Super Bowl this season with Trevor Lawrence under a rookie contract, when we know the market is going to get pushed higher up for quarterbacks, when we just saw Jalen Hurts get $179.3 million in guaranteed money. Trevor Lawrence is going to be eligible for a contract extension by the end of this season, if memory serves me correctly. So if the Jaguars do want to go ahead and get a receiver in these guys, that is very realistic, and I don't think that it's very far stretched because Quentin Johnson is a very good receiver at TCU. I know he has his flaws, but his athleticism is off the charts, and I do still think he's got the highest ceiling of all the wide receivers in this draft. That doesn't mean his floor is going to be the best, but I do think that his absolute peak ceiling is better than any of the receivers in this year's class from what I've evaluated. Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Joshua Downs, the list goes on. If the Jaguars want to go ahead and grab some of these guys, especially knowing that Calvin Ridley's going to get a big payday after this season because he's on the last year of his rookie contract. Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, while these guys are great, they're going to have huge contract hits into next season as well too, even though I do expect them to be around. And I do think that it's very realistic that the Jaguars could potentially go ahead and take one of these elite receivers if they drop down in this year's draft. I don't think that's a bad take at all. And let me clarify my comments once again just to make sure that you guys understand that I'm not taking a receiver at number 24 overall, or maybe even in the second round, unless JSN or maybe Jordan Addison falls to 24, which I highly doubt it. Then maybe I'll consider it. The Jaguars just don't need to draft a wide receiver early on in this year's draft to help take this team to the next level, but I guess more firepower could never hurt. Now this next tweet is not a bad one either. It says Darnell Washington, he's a great young tight end who will make up for Manhurts, also pretty much damn near another offensive lineman. Now with Darnell Washington, I personally don't think he's a first round talent. I think his ceiling is incredibly high. I do think that he does possess a lot of athleticism, and that was very evident at the University of Georgia. He's clearly a game-breaking tight end when he reaches his ceiling, and there's a lot he's got to develop. I do think he's still a project tight end, but I do think in the right system and in the right scheme, in a tight end-centric offense like Doug Peterson is, Darnell Washington does have that opportunity to flourish. I don't think you would see it in the first year. He does have some good run blocking ability, and he is extremely versatile. He's essentially another receiver out there who's just 6'6", 6'7". Darnell Washington's a freak athlete. I wouldn't mind it. I just don't know if I'm taking him at number 24 overall. To me, that feels like a little bit of a reach, but you never know. Now, this next tweet I really like a lot. It says, Will McDonald should be the pick if he's there. Out of Iowa State, if you watched him, and I haven't done all that much evaluation on him compared to some of the other edge rushers, but from what I've seen of him and a little bit of my breakdowns of him, Will McDonald is a very good player. I don't think he's perfect right now, but I think alongside Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen, you'd really see him flourish. Maybe you can move Trayvon to the inside on a lot of plays, and schematically you could find a way for them to flourish together, because as a pure edge rusher, he did a great job at Iowa State last season as well too, and I do think that he does fit the bulky mold. When you talk about 34+ inch arm length, you talk about the athleticism and the measurables that he possesses. I think he also ran a 4.72 at the 40. He's got the speed, he's got the athleticism, he's got the measurables. Plus, he does fit what the Jaguars want to do, and especially if you could move Trayvon to the inside and you can keep Josh Allen on the outside as well too, I'm sure that there's a way that the Jaguars can make Will McDonald or maybe another guy like Myles Murphy fit with the Jaguars right now. I'm totally cool with this pick. Now let's get into this next one. This one's a really hot take as well too. Bijon Robinson in the first gives us the best backfield in the league. Now me, I personally wouldn't debate that Travis Etienne and Bijon Robinson wouldn't be a top 3 backfield in football. I do think that they would be an elite backfield right there, and that would give us more firepower on offense, and it would really help alleviate a lot of pressure off of Travis Etienne. But when the Jaguars already re-signed JaMycal Hasty and D'Ernest Johnson coming over from the Cleveland Browns, there's no need for the Jaguars to go out there and get Bijon Robinson. And look, Bijon Robinson's probably going to translate to the NFL, and he's probably going to go ahead and dominate his rookie season, because we know how running backs come in. When they're at the top of their game and they've got fresh legs, they're going to be a great player. But there's no need for the Jaguars to go ahead and take a Bijon Robinson or a running back for that matter in the first round. I just don't see it with this team right now. Travis Etienne can clearly carry the load, especially if he holds onto the ball next season, and I do believe he's going to do a lot better with that. There's no need for the Jaguars to take Bijon Robinson. Now this last scorching hot take, it says we trade up to number 7 overall and we take JSN. And for y'all that don't know, JSN is Jackson Smith-Njigba, arguably the best wide receiver in this year's class. And JSN is a polished route runner. I think he's got the highest floor in this year's class, and he's one of the most polished wide receivers coming into this year's class. I think JSN is a phenomenal player. But same thing I kind of said earlier about JSN, Quentin Johnson, Zay Flowers, Joshua Downs, Jordan Addison, the list goes on. There's no need really for the Jaguars to go ahead and take a wide receiver in the first round. Would it go ahead and make the Jaguars offense a lot more potent and maybe take it to that next tier? It very well could be, who knows? But at the end of the day, I don't think the Jaguars desperately need a wide receiver or a running back in this year's draft. I don't think that you probably take one in the first 3 rounds. Maybe if you find a guy at number 88 overall in the 3rd round, maybe a guy like Xavier Hutchinson or someone else that would maybe fit that mold and could have some long-term success, you go ahead and take them. I'm not taking them in the first 2 rounds, and especially if you're gonna trade up to 7 from 24, you're gonna be giving up a lot of draft compensation. Like I said, I don't really like that one at all. But Jaguar fans, that's it for this video. I want to hear your guys' thoughts about some of these hot takes, and I want you guys to go ahead and drop me a hot take in the comments down below about what the Jaguars are going to do in the first round of this year's draft. But Jags fans, if you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure that you guys go ahead and drop me a thumbs up. It takes 1 second and it helps me the channel out tremendously. And make sure that you guys also go follow me on my socials, especially on Twitter. I'm very active and I'm on there every single day. The link tree will be in the description down below. But thanks again for sticking around throughout the whole video. Brett James, aka BJ. I'm out, y'all. Go Jags, baby. Peace.